All right, today we are diving deep into a true classic for anyone who tells stories. Lajos Egri's The Art of Dramatic Writing. We're going to unpack its core genius and distill it into a blueprint, a real set of tools that you can use to build a much, much better story.
So let's start with a big romantic myth. You know the one, that great writers are just struck by lightning, that incredible stories just flow out of them like magic. But let's be real. If you've ever stared down a blank page, you know that feeling of frustration, and you just know there has to be a better way.
And this is exactly where Lajos Egri comes in. His whole point was that writing isn't some unknowable magic, it's a craft. You know, just like building a house or composing a piece of music, it has fundamental principles. And he believed that understanding those principles is what makes the difference between a story that just wanders around and one that has real power and purpose.
Egri's first rule, and honestly, it might be the most important one, is super simple. You have to know where you're going before you start the trip. For a writer, that destination is your premise. Think of it as the North Star for your story, the compass that guides every single word, every character, every scene.
So what exactly is a premise? Well, Egri had this great analogy. He said, a writer without a premise is like an inventor who's tinkering away with all these gears and springs. And when you ask him, hey, what's that gadget you're building? He just shrugs and says, I have no idea. A premise gives your story a point. It's the core argument, the one idea your entire narrative is designed to prove.
And the beautiful thing is, a really solid premise has this elegant little three-part structure. It kicks off with a character trait, something like frugality. That trait then causes some kind of conflict, which is the leads to part. And finally, it points directly to the story's end, the resolution, in this case, waste. So, frugality leads to waste. Boom. You've got the seed of your entire story in just 4 words.
And once you see this pattern, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere. I mean, think about it. Great love defies even death. Sound familiar? That's Romeo and Juliet. Ruthless ambition leads to its own destruction. Hello, Macbeth. It's like the hidden DNA inside some of the greatest stories ever told.
Okay, so if the premise is our destination, our North Star, what's the engine that's actually going to get us there? For Egri, the answer is clear: the character. And this is key. Characters aren't just little pawns you move around a plot. No, they are the living, breathing, driving force of the whole story.
Egri's big insight was this: character is destiny. I mean, just let that sink in. It means that a character's actions should never, ever feel random. They have to be the logical, inevitable result of who that person is deep down. Their wants, their fears, their flaws. That's what drives their choices, and in the end, that's what decides their fate.
So how do you build a character that's so real they can drive a whole story? Well, Egri gives us this incredible tool he calls the bone structure. It's a way of looking at a person from 3 different dimensions. First, physiology. That's their body, age, health, what they look like. Then sociology, their place in the world, their job, their class, their friends. And finally, psychology, their inner world, their ambitions, their beliefs, their secret frustrations. You put all 3 together, and you don't just have a character sketch, you have a believable human being.
Okay, so let's recap. We have a premise, that's our goal. And we have a 3-dimensional character, that's our engine. So what happens when you point that engine at its goal and hit the gas? You get conflict. And not just any old disagreement, but something powerful, something unstoppable.
Egri called the best kind of conflict the unity of opposites. This is when 2 forces are locked together in a struggle that neither one can walk away from. Think about a deadly virus and a white blood cell in your body. They can't just agree to disagree and go their separate ways. It's a fight to the finish. That is the kind of inescapable, high-stakes struggle that creates truly gripping drama.
But why? What's the whole point of all this conflict and struggle? For Egri, it's all about one thing: change. Conflict isn't just there for exciting action scenes. It's a crucible. It's a test designed to put so much pressure on a character that they are forced to evolve, to grow, to break, or to become someone new by the end. If they're the same person at the end as they were at the beginning, the story has failed.
And all of this leads us to Egri's most radical, most game-changing idea. This is the big one. The concept that pulls everything we've talked about together and pretty much flips centuries of storytelling theory right on its head.
See, for thousands of years, going all the way back to Aristotle, everybody just assumed that plot was king. The story was a fixed sequence of events, and characters were just sort of plugged into it to make it happen. But Egri came along and said, nope, you've got it completely backward.
He argued that a well-drawn character, acting truthfully to their own nature, will create the plot. The plot isn't some external thing, it's just the trail of footprints a character leaves behind.
To prove it, he came up with this fantastic thought experiment. Just imagine for a second. Forget the plot of Romeo and Juliet. Let's just do a character swap. What happens if, instead of the impulsive, passionate Romeo, it's the famously indecisive, overthinking Hamlet who crashes the Capulets' party and sees Juliet?
And there's the brilliant punchline. Hamlet wouldn't have sprinted to her balcony. Oh no, he would have thought about it, weighed the pros and cons, maybe written a long, angsty monologue or two. And while he was busy contemplating everything, Juliet would have been married off to Paris, and the story would be over before it even began. A different character doesn't just change the plot, they create a totally different one, or in this case, no plot at all.
So there you have it, Egri's blueprint all laid out. It starts with a clear premise, that's your goal. That premise is then proven by a three-dimensional character. That character's deep-seated nature creates unstoppable conflict, and that conflict forces a change, which leads to a logical resolution that ultimately proves the premise you started with. See how it all connects? It's a perfect, powerful system.
And that leaves us with one last fascinating question. Because Egri's principles don't just apply to fiction. We all operate based on our own premises, driven by our own unique character traits. So think about it for a second. If your life were a story, what's the one-sentence premise that it seems to be proving? What's the premise that you are living out right now?